Mr. Lee Davis, thank you for being here. Would you like me, I'll make the same offer to everyone. Would you like me to go over those questions again?
Only if you could do it to song.
I will spare you that.
All right. Nice to meet you all. Name's William Davis. I go by Lee, my middle name. My wife Heather's actually in the room here. You may know us from Lexington Mercantile. My youngest daughter is a master's student at UVA, and my oldest daughter is a VMI grad and Army or Air Force Intel officer. I'm also a VMI grad with 23 years of military service, and the child of a service member. And I say that for a reason, because I moved around every 2 to 3 years my entire life, up until about 2020. So when I moved to Lexington 6 years ago, this is officially the longest I've lived anywhere in my entire life. I never had a where from. This town is now my where from. This is where I belong. And I want to do what I can to contribute to make this city the best version of itself. Not sure what that means, but it evolves and you find it and it happens, right? So that's what I want to do. And I'd also like to mention that as a small business owner, as somebody whose house is actually literally in view of this front door, I have skin in the game. All the decisions that this body make affect me personally, privately, professionally. And I think it's important that when you have that skin in the game, that you contribute in any way you can. And I'd like this really to be a way to see how city government works and to contribute in that way. Question number 2. All right, so to talk about experience, skills, and perspectives, you kind of have to rewind a little bit to understand where somebody's coming from. So when I graduated from VMI, the first thing the Coast Guard did to me is they sent me to a ship down in the Caribbean, and they put you in charge of people and they give you a task. You don't know what any of that means, of course, because you're 22 years old and you've never done anything. But you think that you're supposed to lead and they're supposed to give you trust. It's the most, and that's the opposite way of it, right? So when you talk about leadership, there's leadership and followership, and it's all along the sliding scale. And as you get older, you learn to kind of float back and forth, depending on your expertise, your knowledge, what you've done in the past, your experiences. And as you go along, you learn a whole lot about collaboration, consensus building, basic management of people, money, parts. You learn failure. You learn failure. You learn resiliency to recover from that failure because you're going to fail. And you learn to explain goals. And I think that this body is really good about that. You have to explain what you're doing so people understand it. If you simply do things, then nobody will support you because they don't know why you're doing them. And I think that's incredibly important and very powerful. And as you progress in this career, as you progress in this, money goes up, people go up, impacts go up, but really nothing changes. You're still doing the same thing. The same mechanics of leadership still apply regardless. You make sure that people know you have their back. You make sure that they know that you're there for them personally and professionally. You make sure that they understand the goals that you are trying to achieve. You clearly articulate the end state, right? And then you make sure their families are well cared for. Because if somebody's family is not cared for, they're not going to do what has to be done when it gets hard. You have to take care of the whole human being. And I think that this organization is interesting because it takes care of the city, it takes care of the families, it takes care of the people, and it takes the whole ecosystem. And I think that's incredibly powerful. So what do I bring? I bring leadership and followership experience. And I intentionally say followership because I think that's important. I bring the soft skills needed to work effectively in such a public position. I bring the ability to take complex information in from various sources, kind of distill it, make my own ideas about this, share those ideas with my peers, and then come to a decision. And not in a way that requires 1,000 hours of research, in a way that happens quickly when decisions have to happen. That doesn't mean that you shut down your learning and stop deciding when you make that decision. You still learn and you still go about it. And time that I work collaboratively with others. So I struggle with this question. I wanted to come up with an answer that was impactful is what you all do. So I do have one, but it's a little bit of a bummer. So as commanding officer at a unit, I had just reported, and 6 months later, somebody killed themselves. Pretty serious stuff, right? My responsibility at that point was to care for his family. That was the number one position. Because that person, you couldn't care for him anymore. You had to care for his family. The next step was to make a line of duty determination. And what does that mean? What does line of duty mean if you haven't thought about that before? It's to say that death is connected to service, and then therefore the family can get benefits. And the only person who can legally make that determination is the commanding officer. So what do, right? You order an investigation, you confer with counsel, you confer with your own leadership because they have the experience. You want to grab into that experience from the people that have been doing it for a long time. And at the end of the day, you write a package, you send it to the personnel command, and then but before that, you sign it. And when you sign it, that signature can't be erased. That can't be undone. Nobody above you can take that away. So it's kind of a big deal when that happens. So between myself, my legal team, my leadership team, none of us were in agreement. We sat down for a long time on this to make sure we had legal sufficiency. The lawyers for the government want the lowest risk option possible for the government. The command for my leadership for various reasons, he had some personal issues with it, so he wasn't willing to call it line of duty. So we worked about this for a long time. Finally got to the point where we got to legal sufficiency. We got it to the point that it was in the line of duty, so his family's taken care of. The lawyer didn't necessarily agree with what we did, but he agreed that we actually crossed all the dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Commanding officer, or rather my leadership, was not on board with this. For his own personal reasons, he thought this was something you couldn't forgive. And that meant that you couldn't give a line of duty determination. But I had earned that trust. We talked about trust earlier. I had earned that trust. He said, Lee, do what you got to do, but I don't agree with this. So I signed the papers. I sent it in, and he took a look at it, and he let me know that I was wrong. He let me know in no uncertain terms, in as polite a way as the military can do, that I was wrong. But I stuck by my guns because I think it's important when it gets hard, you don't cave. Doesn't mean you don't change your mind if new information comes along, but you don't cave just because it's hard. And then 2 weeks later, after it cooled down, after he had read it, after it had gone in, he called me up and he said, that was the right answer. You did the right thing for those people. You did the right thing for that service member. I'm glad you did this, and I'm glad you didn't listen to me. And that ultimately reinforced my belief that leadership actually matters. The leadership of this group in this city matters. In fact, the funny thing happens when somebody takes charge. It doesn't happen in an organization like this with many bodies, but at command. The command will suddenly adopt the personality of the person in charge. So leadership matters. It's always important to bring your first foot forward, to be the best person you can be, and always strive to be better than yourself. Always treat others with empathy and understanding. That is the most important thing, I think. And then gaining and giving trust. I gained trust, I gave trust, and because of that, the collaboration, we trusted each other to make those decisions regardless. So in the end, I think it worked out well, but I will leave you with this. I think I'd be good to work with all of you. I really do. And what I really want to do is bring 100% of myself to this, and I want to make Lexington the best version of itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.